Good morning, beloved. Peace be with you. I forgot I wanted to welcome Anna, our sign language interpreter for the day. We're very happy she's here. I'm going to try to preach slowly, Also, first, just want to welcome everyone. Welcome, especially our visitors. If you've been traveling, from another place to visit family and friends, welcome. We're so glad you're here today. Especially welcome our Christmas and Easter only Catholics. Welcome, welcome. We're so happy you're here. We love you. I love when you come. It helps just test the parishioners, to see how are they will they have a Christian response when you take their seat, Will they have a Christian response when you take their parking spot, I got to test the people to see, where I got to teach next. So anyway, welcome. We are very glad you're here, every one of you. And we'll welcome you next week too, Welcome. Come on down. Today we are going to just jump into the gospel, break it open a little bit. There's a lot of wonderful gospel insights for this Resurrection Sunday that we can pull out of it. So put your thinking caps on, your heads and your hearts, and here we go, Helps as also for a lot of these gospel stories, try to put ourselves in the shoes of the people there, especially putting ourselves in the shoes of Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. They are going to the tomb early in the morning, expecting one thing, but experiencing something different. Has that ever happened to you? You're going to approach God, expecting one thing, and you get something different, You came for Easter Sunday, expecting a short homily, you got a long one, Sometimes that's how God works. Well, they're going here early in the morning, before dawn, to see the tomb. When they get to the tomb, it says, "Behold, there was a great earthquake." Why was there an earthquake? It says because, those tectonic shifts under the earth were moving around, and gases were bubbling up and shit. No, it didn't say that, Notice that the scriptures, Old and New Testament, are always teaching us how to recognize and view and see the world, especially to see the physical and spiritual realms and how they're interconnected. So the text tells us, there was a great earthquake because an angel of the Lord descended from heaven. Have you ever thought about seeing earthquakes in that way? That when an earthquake happens, perhaps an angel has come. This is how the Bible is teaching us to see. Remember, there's a physical realm and a spiritual realm. They're interconnected. When something happens in the physical realm, it affects the spiritual realm. When something is happening in the spiritual realm, has an effect, a manifestation in the physical realm. You and I live in both realms at the same time. We are both physical, we have physical bodies and a spiritual soul. So we live and exist and interact in both realms at the same time. So the text tells us there was an earthquake, a physical manifestation on the earth because something spiritual happened. A spiritual being came and became present. Anybody have one of those earthquake apps? Come on, you guys. Well, I had one and then I deleted it, but I was checking it out one time. I deleted it because I realized, I kept looking at it day after day, I'm like, there's like small mini earthquakes happening all the time, every day, all over the world. All over the world, every day, there's little earthquakes happening. Well, if we take this text and that thinking and go a little bit further, what if the Bible is teaching us to see the world in this way, where we're recognizing every time there is some kind of an earthquake around the world, perhaps that is a physical manifestation of spiritual angelic activity happening in the world. Physical earthquakes, angelic activity. You never thought of that, huh? Possibly. It's not doctrine, it's not taught in the catechism, but possibly as we walk out our thinking process. And actually that principle and thinking process is very Catholic. It's very Catholic Christian. Look at our sacraments. All of our sacraments are physical signs, physical manifestations of something spiritual happening. Last night we had those who were coming into the church, and so they received different sacraments: baptism, confirmation, first Eucharist. And look at what happens at every sacrament. They were had physical water poured on them, but the change didn't happen to them physically, it happened spiritually. There was a spiritual washing away of their sins, and a spiritual cleansing, and a spiritual uniting of their spirit with the Spirit of God. And the Spirit of God filled them, and Jesus came into their heart. And their soul, the Catechism teaches their soul received a seal or an imprint on their soul. So call it a spiritual tattoo. They all got spiritually tattooed last night. All because they took physical water, poured it on their head, then all the spiritual stuff happened. See how the physical changes the spiritual realm. And then when they were confirmed later on that night, it was all I did was take blessed oil from the bishop, and I make a cross on their forehead, and I say, "Be sealed with the gift of the Holy Spirit." And those physical signs had spiritual effects. In the physical realm, it was oil and words blessing. But in the spiritual realm, again, their souls were sealed again. They received another seal, another imprint, another spiritual tattoo that you can't undo. It marks you for Christ forever. It says you belong to Christ. And then later on that night, they received first Eucharist. Eucharist, it's a physical sign that looks like bread and wine, but it's spiritually the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. And so their souls were nourished as they ate the spiritual food of the life of Christ in the Eucharist. So again, a physical manifestation or a physical sign that it was affecting the spiritual realm. All things we have to constantly remind ourselves of every day, because otherwise, you know how it is. Out of sight, out of mind. And so it's so easy to forget about the spiritual realm, or to forget about our spiritual life and that we need spiritual nourishment, because it's out of sight, so it can be out of mind. So easy to get distracted with other things in life. Well, we made it 2 sentences in. But I want to make up for you who haven't been here for a while, so we're going to keep going. Because I love you. Okay. So perhaps earthquakes are physical manifestations of angelic activity all over the world. Well, this angel comes and appears, and it says an angel of the Lord descended from heaven, approached, rolled back the stone, and then sat upon it. You can picture this angel just sitting on this stone like, check out what I did. See? I rolled that stone back, took 6 of you men and just 1 of me. It reminds me of you have a dog or a cat who sometimes will, if you've ever had the pleasure of them bringing you a rat or a mouse, and they run up to you wherever you are, and they just drop it at your feet. They sit there and wag their little tail, and they're all proud. Look what I did, look what I did, look what I did. And you're like, thanks. Right? That's like this angel. He's so happy, sitting on this stone. Check out what I did. Check it out. And while this is happening, it tells us the guards were shaken with fear and became like dead men. In other words, they fainted. These big, you got to pay attention here. These big old Roman guards who were supposed to be used to fighting and violence and all kinds of crazy stuff in front of them, they fainted. Meanwhile, the ladies are standing there strong. It implies they were afraid, but they did not faint like these little Roman soldiers, They stood there and were watching this angel. Ladies are tough. Women are tough. God made them different, They could handle much more than the men. Ask any woman who's had a baby, The men will be crying, and the women are like, I'm tough. I was made for this. They're made different. These two women standing here, tough. The men fainted, and the women stood strong. And one reason they stood strong is because they were in love. And they were coming to see the body of the one they love. And you don't get in the middle of a woman and something or someone she loves. You don't get in front of a mama bear and her cubs. And so even though this is the angel of the Lord who strikes fear, they stand strong because they came to see the body of the one they love. Do we stand strong to see the one we love, to see Jesus whom we love, even in the midst of fear? They stand there, and the angel gives them a message. Always are good to remember, wherever there's an angel, there is a message. That's what the word for angel or angelos means. It means messenger. And so, again, continuing our thought process from before, if perhaps it's possible that whenever there's an earthquake, it's because there's angelic activity, then whenever there's an earthquake and angelic activity, there's a message that God's trying to speak to us. So it could be wise, anytime you recognize an earthquake, to stop and say, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. What is it you want to say? What is the message you're bringing?" Well, here's the angel's message. Do not be afraid. I know that you are seeking Jesus, the crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised just as he said. Come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly, tell his disciples. And he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him. Behold, I have told you. In other words, I delivered the message. It's up to you now. This message changes everything. Think about if someone you loved died. They died in the hospital and you were there. And you waited a little bit as you mourned with the body. And then the hospital told you, you've got to go. We have to prepare the body for the mortuary to pick it up. And so you go. But before you go, they say, well, you can, call the mortuary in about 3 hours, just to make sure they picked it up, they've got the body, then maybe if you haven't already, you can bring the clothes that they're going to dress the body in. So you go home and you wait, and a couple hours go by, and then you call the mortuary to make sure. Did you pick up the body of my dad, of my mom, of my spouse? And they say, we don't have the body. They're alive. You'd say, what? Yeah. Some Christian person came by after you left and asked to pray. We said, well, why not? They prayed over the body, and they came back to life. And you'd say, Well, why didn't anybody call me? What, they came back to life? Where are they? And they said, well, no, we didn't call because they said they were going to meet you in that place where you first met. So if you go there, you'll probably see them there. That's what Galilee is. It's the first place where they met Jesus. That message for you would change everything. You wouldn't say, oh, great, I'll call them later. Or you wouldn't try just to call them on the phone and say, hey, I heard you're alive now. So we're still on for Friday night dinner? All right, see you Friday. Like, no, you wouldn't go about your ordinary, everyday life. You wouldn't just go back into your normal schedule. It would change everything. You would drop everything and go to that place, wherever you first met them, to wait and see. You're alive? What happened? What did you experience while you were dead? It would change everything. That message would change everything for you. That's the message of Easter. Christ is risen. It should change everything about our life and the whole way we prioritize our life. It changed the lives of all the early church, all the believers. This is why they would leave jobs, leave homes, leave even friends and family to follow Christ, risen. This is why they were not afraid many of them, to be crucified with him, to be crucified just like him, or to be thrown in the Colosseum, eaten alive by animals, because they had this hope and promise of a resurrected, immortal body, of never dying again. Christ has risen. That message changes everything. Because Christ is alive, it means you and I can pray and talk to him. We can have a relationship with him. Because Christ is alive, you and I can gather to worship. We can feel his presence and his peace in our life. Because Christ is alive, we can cast out demons in his name. Because he's alive, his authority and power are there. Because Christ is alive, we can lay hands on the sick and pray that they may be healed. Because Christ is alive, everything he said is true. Every promise he made, we can depend on. Because Christ has risen, our sins are truly forgiven. Sin has been conquered. Death has also been conquered because Christ has risen. Think about it. I have to, to be honest, I have to think out this next thought more fully. But think about it. When Christ comes again, so because Christ is risen, he is coming again. That was one of the other things he promised. I'm coming back for you. And when he comes again, he said, one of the first things that will happen is going to be judgment. I think we still tend to think of judgment, Christ coming again and judgment. He's going to come and judge me of my sins. But he already conquered sins. He already dealt with them. He already washed them away. They're already gone. He already forgave us of those. He died for those. That's over and done with. So then what is the judgment? What will we be judged on? Whether we believed. Whether we believe him with the actions of our life. Whether we truly follow him. Whether we're in relationship with him or not. Remember, at different times he says, people came to him trying to get into heaven, and he said, "Depart from me. But I did all kinds of good works in your name for you. I did lots of good things for you." He says, "Yes, but I never knew you. I never knew you. You never came into relationship with me. I never came into relationship with me. That's the whole reason Jesus died and rose from the dead. He was dying to be in relationship with us, dying for love of us. That's the whole message of the cross. It's Jesus crying out, screaming at the top of his lungs, I love you. 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 What else can I do to show you? I love you. How will we respond? This message of Easter changes everything. Christ's love has risen. It cannot die. He will never stop loving us. How will we respond? Will we receive that love? Because he can't save us without us. He needs us to say yes. He needs us to say, I want you. He needs us to say, I love you too. And not just with our lips, but with the actions of our life. This is the Easter resurrection message. It should change our whole lives, rearrange our whole lives, recenter our whole lives, reprioritize our whole lives. Christ died for us so that we could now live for him. Not to live for ourselves, but to live for him. Has this message changed the way you live? Do you live different because Christ is truly risen? Or if Christ had not risen from the dead, would there be any change in your life? A Christian hermit was once asked, "What is a Christian anyway?" And he responded and said, "A Christian is someone who has fallen in love with Jesus." A Christian, a Catholic, is someone who has fallen in love with Jesus. Have you fallen in love with Jesus? It's not a romantic love. There's nothing romantic about this, but there's something very loving about this. Have you allowed your life to be changed by love incarnate? Have you let your life be changed by those words, I love you, I love you? What difference does Christ, the risen Christ, make in your life today? Can the people in your life tell that you are in love with Jesus? Can your family tell that you are in love with Jesus? Is there physical manifestations? Is there physical priorities in your life schedule? Can your coworkers tell that you're in love with Jesus? You've fallen in love. You can't help it almost. Can you look in the mirror at yourself and tell that you are a man or a woman in love with Jesus? And that loving relationship is changing and messing up your whole life. This is why Christ came. This is why he died. This is why he rose from the dead. He's dying to be in relationship with us. He rose to be in eternal relationship with us, but it doesn't happen without us. How will we respond? Jesus has messed up my whole life. I had other plans. I was on a different road. I had a job I liked, good money, a nice apartment I lived in Point Loma. Spent a lot of time with my friends. Got to date girls. And now it's all messed up. His love messed me up. And that's what he does. He wants us, as we give him our life, in a sense, we have to die to it. So here's my life. I'll die to this. What do you want to do with it, Lord? As we give him our life, he raises up new life inside of us. He already gives us resurrected new life, a life you would never plan for yourself. But it's a life he has built for you. Will you let Christ mess up your life? You let your spouse mess up your life. You let your children mess up your life. How about Jesus?